Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I am loving your gold tinsel background.
It's a celebration. You have to do it
I,
up.
I completely agree. I love it. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have my a little glass of something here to celebrate.
Chin chin. It's a
Thank
big
you.
day.
It is a big day. I'm very excited.
So am I. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And I'm so excited to talk about Fashioning the Self Zine Volume 2.
Well, thank you for having me. I love the Fashion Studies Alliance. Like, you guys are amazing. So it's just an honor to partner with you guys. So thank you for giving me this platform.
We're so happy to do it. It's just a love fest over here.
It is.
Should we wait a few minutes, or how do you feel about just getting into it? We have just under 10 people now.
Let's just go for it. I mean, I see Sarah Scaturo join, Colleen Hill, Ariel, Hanayra, who's a contributor. Nikki's joined, so we got some heavyweights already in the building. So
Again, thank you so much, Jonathan, for partnering with us to launch and do this Instagram Live about Fashioning the Self in Slavery and Freedom magazine, Volume 2. We know that this comes out of a sort of larger project. Can you talk to us a little bit about Fashioning the Self and how it started and how it sort of exists now?
absolutely, it's actually a little bit of a long story, but I'm going to keep it pithy for the sake of IG Live. But it started out as a digital humanities project. I um, did a class called Fashioning the Self in Slavery and Freedom, or I designed a class called Fashioning the Self in Slavery and Freedom. And the class was actually canceled because of a low enrollment. But I had set up this Facebook page as like a platform for students to engage with the material outside of the classroom. And I was going to share articles and images and podcasts and what have you related to the course topic. And when the class was canceled, I was like, I'm gonna share the information anyway. I'm gonna create like an online class. And I just started posting images with captions and articles and videos and invited my friends to like the page, and it really just took off from there. And about maybe 2 or 3 years into doing that, I felt like I was just sharing things and not really creating things. And I felt the need to actually like create content and actually push some conversations forward. And I feel like I have so many like dope, amazing friends who are doing like amazing work, and I wanted to give them a platform to share their work. So also, I'm always like, as a person, I've always been thirsty for a creative outlet, and for me, this is like my creative outlet. So that's kind of the backstory behind the magazine.
That's great. Thank you. And the website also is so amazing. I made sure to put it on all of my syllabi for the fall because it's such an important resource, and your descriptions are so well researched and great. And so you published Volume 1, I think, a little bit over a year ago, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. Yep.
Now we have the volume 2. Can you talk to us about like this? Is it an expansion of Volume 1? So for everyone on Instagram, if you go on Fashion Studies Alliance link in bio, you could go and purchase Volume 2 today. Go buy your copies. So how is Volume 2 sort of different than Volume 1, or just is it an expansion? Can you tell us about the second iteration?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of things from the first issue. Like, I had never done a magazine before. So the second time around, I think there were some things that I wanted to change up. For example, doing a print magazine is very different than putting content out digitally. So I really wanted to make sure that it was a beautiful object. So I was,
Yes.
oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yes, I wanted the second issue to be even more aesthetically beautiful. Like I wanted it to be something that you can like toss on your coffee table and someone would come into your home and be like, "Oh, what is this? What's fashioning itself?" So I spent more time on the production end this time around. Um, so the magazine is just more beautiful. Like it's just the quality of the paper is better, the design is better. I worked with the amazing graphic designer who wasn't able to be here for the launch party, but his name is Jerome Harris. He's a black graphic designer. He's actually the artistic director of Housing Works, if you know that.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. And he did a really fantastic job. I love the design.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, why am I saying thank you? Thank you, Jerome, for designing a beautiful magazine. And it's full of like little subtle things that um, I think people might not even realize. Like for instance, the he wanted to redesign the Fashion Itself logo, and I was like, that's my baby. I designed that myself. I'm not sure if I want you to redesign the logo, but for this issue, I allowed him to sort of change the Fashion Itself logo, and his font is actually called Martin, and it's actually inspired by the civil rights movement.
Oh, wow.
So have you seen that classic like "I am a man"
Yes.
sign? This is the
Yes.
font from that "I'm a man" sign.
So can you tell us about some of the contributions that you've received for volume 2 and who participated, what kind of articles?
Oh my gosh, I could talk about that for an hour. Like, I love everyone who contributed to the magazine. And actually, I didn't do an open call for contributions. I just reached out to people from my network and asked them to contribute pieces. So I have a personal connection to each and every person who contributed to the magazine. So, I mean, if it was starting with, Ricky Bird, who's someone I've known for years, fashion scholar. She's currently doing her PhD at Northwestern. One of my childhood friends, Monique Johnson, who worked at a plantation museum in Louisiana, wrote a piece about her experience working at a plantation museum. Um, a dear friend, Hanayra, who I'm going to speak with later in this conversation, contributed a piece on her family history. She's Brazilian, so she talked about her experiences as a Afro-Brazilian and that relationship with fashion in that sense. So, I mean, everyone like Reagan Gillum, who wrote a book, wrote an article on T-shirts and like Afro-Brazilian identity. So everyone in the magazine, I have a personal connection to in some way, either a friend or a colleague or yeah.
And as an editor, how was that like? Did you feel that it was a different sort of editorial experience?
Yeah, I could be more candid. I
Mm.
was ruthless. I slashed him. It was like, look, we know each other. Like, I got to cut this paragraph, or I have to rephrase this paragraph. So it was actually easy. Um, you might think it might be harder to edit a friend's work, but I think because I knew everyone who contributed to the magazine, they just trusted me and they sent me their pieces. And it depended on the person. Like some people submitted pieces and like it was well written and I copied and pasted and it was good to go. But there was other pieces that I spent literally weeks or months sort of working and honing.
That's great. And I'm sure that made it so much more interesting to work it out. And as a labor of love, also to be able to have that sort of interaction with the contributors is, I'm sure, really fulfilling and great. So how about the creation? I know that you were speaking about the design and how you really took a major role in sort of in art direction, I guess, figuring out how to work with the designer and getting a really, really strong design and having it very beautiful is very important to you. But we know that fashioning the self in slavery and freedom started as this like born digital thing.
Hmm.
So in what, other than like making something, what was your experience doing that transition, and what were some of the challenges and pitfalls that you encountered? I know that there, a lot of people sort of flirt with the idea of creating magazines.
Yeah, I think fashion itself is like just me hovering over my laptop, like creating little Facebook posts or Instagram posts. But this is the first time that it was like fashion itself was a collaborative project. And, collaborations are great because you're sharing the labor with other people, but also they can be tricky because you have to make compromises.
Hmm.
So I think that was like the most fruitful part of doing the magazine, but also the most challenging part that, it wasn't just me alone creating it, even though like I would say maybe 40% or 50% of the labor fell on me in terms of like editing. And maybe I would give like 40% on the graphic designer. I also worked with a wonderful editorial assistant for the first time, which is something I didn't do for the first issue. And um, she, I edited many of the pieces, but she also did some editing for those pieces. She's a Harvard student, Mary Soon. You can see her name in the masthead. So, yeah, like it was just more collaborative. There were more people involved in this second volume than in the first volume, which was literally me. The first volume was me and a graphic designer and the people who contributed their pieces. No editorial assistant, um, and less pieces.
I know what you mean. The sort of plight of the historian is that it's a solitary endeavor most of the time, right? Either
Exactly.
reading alone or you're writing alone, or like you say, you're hovering over your computer alone. And there is something to say about like a really interesting collaborative experience where other people fulfill needs that or roles that you can't provide, but you
Hmm.
have to like deal with it. That's so interesting. And so, how about, are you thinking about a volume three? Are you thinking of continuing with the series?
Absolutely. Yeah, actually already started on the third volume.
Oh, wow.
I already have a piece that's already written that I'm in the process of editing for the third volume. I mean, that won't be out until not this year, sometime next year. But I've actually started thinking about the third volume, and I really want, you know, any of my students who might be watching or anyone who's heard me like rattle off about my research knows that one thing that I often say is that there's, you know, text and textile have the same Latin root.
Yes.
And I'm trying to play around with that idea a little bit more. So instead of printing text on paper like I did in the first and second volume, I want to print the third volume on industrial textile waste. So it's going to be actually like a usable piece of fabric that you can like make into a curtain or a scarf or like a picnic blanket. So I actually want it to be laid out on a piece of fabric, which I'm still working out the details of.
I love this.
But
This is a fantastic idea and such an interesting way of sort of like merging the sort of like materiality that a lot of what you research and talk about and what the publication discusses in the actual object itself. And it's so interesting, in this, um, COVID world where so much is virtual, where, you and I right now are on a screen together, this idea of like materiality and how do we communicate material, how are we going to talk about materiality if we're talking about it on a screen. It's a very interesting sort of new way of thinking about it, and your idea for volume three sort of is an interesting um, answer or solution to that. How have you been sort of dealing with this idea of materiality in this sort of immaterial world we're hopefully temporarily in?
well, it's funny, like even though we're all separated from each other and we're all sort of interacting through screens, through this project, I've tried to make it as personal and material as possible. So, like, each magazine that I sent out, like, I personally walked to the post office, stood in a long line, and mailed each issue. So my hands have been on each and every issue of the magazine. And many of the issues I've tried to actually wrap in fabric. It's tricky because technically it's not allowed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's weird, right? You're not allowed to wrap. You're not allowed to mail objects wrapped in fabric.
It has to
Um,
be like a cardboard box or something.
or paper or something. They're afraid that the threads will get wrapped up in the systems, like the sorting systems, which I get, but I was able to sneak some through wrapped in fabric. So that was another way I tried to like create a sense of materiality with each magazine by actually wrapping them in fabrics.
That's fascinating. And have you started thinking about what type of sort of reused fabric you would maybe use? Because, what's amazing now is the printing capabilities on fabric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. Like part of me wants to do like a fabric that's printed on one side and blank on the other side, but I think that might be a little too busy. So I might just go with just a muslin or like a simple linen or cotton. So we'll see.
Well, I'm so excited to hear more about how that goes and volume three.
I have
Please,
a question for you, actually.
please, yeah.
The Fashion Studies Alliance is very similar to Fashion Itself and Slavery and Freedom, is that in that most of the content that you guys put out is digital. And have
Yes.
you guys ever considered doing a print something? Even though you guys put on a lot of events, so there's sort of a brick and mortar sort of component to the Fashion Studies Alliance. But would you guys
Mhm.
consider putting out a product or?
I think that's a great question. I think we've sort of spoken about having a larger sort of conference and then maybe potentially doing something in print from that. But maybe I think what you're suggesting is sort of less um, sort of in the more like traditional conference and then accompanying catalog or book. But that's a really great idea. I don't know if we've ever, perhaps, I will bring it up at the next meeting for sure because we have so many wonderful members, you included, and members who do such important work, such interesting work. And you're definitely right that um, some sort of printed or material thing that can sort of represent the members would be really a great idea. Um, can you tell us more about sort of future plans for Fashioning the Self? Are you really sort of focused now on the zines, or is what else? How are you sort of thinking about the website and what you're going to do there? Do you have future plans with that?
Well, I want to revamp the Fashioning the Self website. I'm in the process of doing that right now. It just needs sort of a facelift. So for a long time, there wasn't a Fashioning the Self website. It was all on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter. There was a Tumblr page that I was using for a while. I even
Mm-hmm.
have a YouTube channel that I post stuff on occasionally. But there was no like actual like Fashioning the Self website. So I actually do have a Fashioning the Self website that I'm in the process. It's up. You can visit it right now. But also I'm in the process of revamping it. So I just want to continue putting out quality content, continue cultivating an audience. I recently co-launched a new project with the scholar Siobhan, who might be watching actually, and it's called Rendering Revolution. And Fashioning Itself just focuses on the African diaspora writ large, but Rendering Revolution focuses specifically on Haiti, and more specifically, the Haitian Revolution. And we're interested in sartorial representations of the Haitian Revolution. So it's very similar to Fashioning Itself in that. Oh, Siobhan's here. Hi, Siobhan. She's on under the Rendering Revolution.
Is it Siobhan May?
Yes.
Siobhan wrote an amazing review of an exhibition in Quebec City. Quebec is my home province. That's where I'm. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the exhibition right now, but this unbelievable exhibition talking about clothing and slavery and representation in um, in Canada when slaves were fleeing to Canada. Fascinating. I'm so excited about this project. Please continue. Tell
Yeah,
me
and
about
that,
it.
and actually, when Siobhan and I were talking about the project, she was inspired by that exhibition, which was called Fugitif.
Yes, that's it. Fugitif.
And it's something that we kind of want to eventually do with Rendering Revolution, because in the exhibition they actually recreated or rendered enslaved people because there wasn't any images of them. So they got an illustrator to actually create images of the enslaved people that they were described in the exhibition. And it's something that we want to do for Rendering Revolution because many of the figures, particularly the female figures, have there are very few surviving images of them. So we actually want to literally render the revolution eventually in the project. But until that point, we're just posting content about the Haitian Revolution, about Haitian creators and fashion designers and artists. So,
That's wonderful. And I think that there isn't enough out there about the Haitian Revolution and how fascinating it was and how it's the first country in the Americas, right, to like gain independence,
hmm,
and it's fascinating. And so I also am very interested in digital humanities.
hmm.
There's projects I'm interested in, and it really is sort of this, I don't want to say it's a new field because it's not. It's been sort of like people have been thinking about it and doing these things within the academy for decades, sort of in a not as large scale. But can you tell me more about sort of your digital humanity? Like, how do you feel about digital humanities, and how does it work within your scholarship and sort of practice as a historian? How do you like to use it?
Yeah, I mean, for the last 3 to 4 years, it's been central to my pedagogical practice. I bring it into the classroom, but also it lives completely outside of the classroom. There's most of the people that I engage with are not in academia. They don't teach full time, whether they're curators or costume designers or um, amateur historians, or just interested people who happen to follow the site. So I think it lives inside and outside academia. And also, I mean, I'm gonna get on my soapbox temporarily, but the politics of academia, like, these institutions are problematic for a whole host of reasons. So it's nice to have some platform, some institution, something that lives outside of academia to
Mm-hmm.
rely on. So the only place of knowledge production is not within the ivory tower, but in other places, which I think is really important.
I completely agree. And, the traditional way of this sort of research getting out there is generally academic journals, which that the layperson isn't, actively subscribing to or reading articles from. And there's something amazing about this online space where someone like you who, is dedicated to like the rigor of how you tell these stories, to be able to have this sort of platform. And the magazine is almost like a celebration of that. You're sort of like memorializing it, like you've been saying, in something material that's beautiful that people could have on their coffee table, that could sort of elicit questions and more interest in the topic.
Exactly. Yeah, like, not everyone in the magazine, but a significant portion of the people who contributed to the magazine are like academics, like people who are either in grad school or are professors. But I made sure that the language was accessible. Like, this isn't a peer-reviewed academic journal. It's rigorous and it's certainly informed by our training as academics, but it's meant to be sort of like more um, accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Like just in regular language so that anyone can read it and enjoy it.
Absolutely. And like you say, this is how we get out of the ivory tower, getting onto the coffee tables. For all of you joining us, please go purchase Fashioning the Self in Slavery and Freedom magazine, volume 2, on sale now. And I wanted to thank you so much, Jonathan. Yes, there it is. It's beautiful. It'll look great on any coffee table, in anybody's hand while they're reading. We love it. So please purchase it and continue in the conversation with Jonathan and some of the contributors, I guess, now or soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. This was so much fun.
It was
And
so much fun. I'm so glad we could do it.
Let me adjust
yes.
this. Oh my God. I'm so nervous, Jonathan. It's
Don't
my
be
first.
nervous. And don't be nervous because, It's all love here. And if you have any trouble speaking in English, just switch to Portuguese.
Okay, this is amazing. You're fluent in Portuguese, and I love it so much when you
Ah.
tell me this. Oh, Jonathan, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh no, thank you for making time. And I know you're so busy because you're teaching a class tonight that I'm actually taking. So Hanayra teaches a class every Wednesday night on Black fashion in Brazil, and I've actually been taking this class. And it's through MASP, which is the Museu dell'Arte
De, de São Paulo.
de São Paulo.
Yes. Museu é Assis Chateaubriand. It's the founder, the founder of the museum. Um, oh my God! Oh, I have
Oh, nice.
yes some drink here too. Cheers, saúde.
Cheers, saúde.
And first of all, I have to say this is amazing, this meeting, because it's my first time speaking English,
Oh.
and you're so good, so amazing, so lovely to receive me, because I wrote to Jonathan in, I don't know, in last year, I guess. And hi, Jonathan. My name is Hanayrá, and I'm from Brazil, and I love your work. And Jonathan was amazing and wrote in Portuguese to me. And this is so special because when you're talking about diaspora and Americans, Afro Americans or Afro Brazilians, this connection is so rich. It's so important to us, né? Eu falo. Vamos alternar português e inglês aqui.
Vamos.
But it's important to train English. English, it's very important. And for me, as an Afro-Brazilian woman, it's very rich and important to have a connection with another scholars, professors, other Black people, because the slavery movement, it was so aggressive, it was so sad, and so many things that we have to put and write our stories, from our points of view.
Point of view.
It's
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to write the article
Oh, yes.
and the fashion and magazine, and Felipe was here, but he's out of scenes.
Oh no. Okay.
But it was amazing for us and for our community, Redandá. It's terreiro here in Brazil from Afro-Brazilian religion. Candomblé was amazing to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you for agreeing to be part of the magazine. And Hanayra was actually referring to her partner, Felipe, who's actually the photographer who did the cover of the magazine, this beautiful photograph.
Come here, baby. Deixa eu tirar o fone.
Hi.
Hey! How are you?
Cheers. I'm fine,
Oh,
thanks.
cheers.
Oh, it's amazing to be a little part of this beautiful project. And for us, not speaking just about me, but our community, the Redandá Terreiro, it's an honor to be a part of a project that connects people from around the world, and we can show a little part of our culture and can invite you to know more about us. So I think this photo is inviting you to come here and meet us and go to understand and know the Afro-Brazilian religions, because there are many of them, not just the one we are a part of. So it's a great honor to be part of this project. I'm a photographer, so I prefer to be behind the camera, so I'm going back. But I'm very glad to see this work out. It's beautiful. Congratulations for you all.
And what I love about your piece, Hanayra, is that there's images from your partner Felipe, but there's also archival images. Like you have family photos from the 30s, 40s, and 50s that you included with your piece. It was just great. It was just like really personal that it's like both family, new family, and also old family photos.
Yes, yes. I am in this journal. Journal?
Magazine,
I,
journal, zine.
no, I mean it's like a trip in my
Oh, journey.
history.
Yes, sorry.
Journey, yes. Journal, not. Yes, a journey in. For me, it's special because I have a huge archive with a lot of photos that my mom is guardian. How can I say this in English? It's like a protector of these photos.
Say it in
What
Portuguese.
what I like to say is my mom is responsible to creating these photographs, and she gave to me this, and I saw a great opportunity to what? Sorry, Felipe is helping me with my English. And these photos are so important. They tell so much about my family and how Afro Brazilians in urban context living. You know, and the family of my mom is a black family from São Paulo that have had an opportunity to take photographs. Was very expensive, and this is for me it's an opportunity to study fashion, the ways of dress of black people here in Brazil. And it's personal, but I believe that's collective too. You know, talks about my history, but my uncle histories, grandfathers and grandmother histories, and friend histories. And I wrote my first Elle magazine article because I am columnist right now. And I wrote about this. I wrote about how my family memories are so important. Our family memories are so important and can teach us about the way of dress, fashion, and we studied photographs of people that we don't know. Why not study our family? Why not to appropriate of these images and doing a good thing with this in fashion histories and fashion studies. You know, here in Brazil we are starting to have a conversation about Black fashion or ways of dress. You know, what means Afro-Brazilian fashion? That we have one, and how can we study this in college or universities? I was a fashion student in my graduation, and I have a master's degree in science of religion to study garments of candomblé. And then I realized that there's so many inspirations and beautiful things that we can find on these photographs, on these stories that we don't learn at college or universities. You know, we don't have here a lot of Black professors of fashion, you know, and our bodies, it's out of the universities.
But I actually want to talk about you more because you are a columnist for El Brasil, and
Yes.
you've written a number of articles for El Brasil, but also you're an educator. So I'm actually taking your class right now at MASP, which is on Black fashion in Brazil. But one thing that I really like about you, okay, two things, two things
Okay.
that I like about you. I like that you incorporate your family history and family photos in your pedagogy. You don't
Yes.
make a sharp distinction between your personal narrative, your personal history, your experiences as a black woman in Brazil with what you study. They're all sort of mixed together, which I really appreciate. Because what we study
Thank
is really
you.
personal. So I really enjoy that. But also what I really enjoy, and this is really academic, but you mix art history with fashion studies. Like you look at black fashion through art history. So in this course that I'm taking with you, we're actually looking at 5 Afro-Brazilian artists and how they sort of incorporate fashion or textile art into their practice.
Yes. Was so easy to me to find this way because I love fashion and I love art history. In my graduation at fashion, I was a student of fashion business and was horrible because art history resumes about the Egypt and a little part of it, and white art history. That's good, and this is important to know about it. But we have a lot of perspectives that's not are so explored. So I want to bring my memories, the memories of my family, and because are so beautiful. You know, my grandfather, the dad of my mom, was a man very chic with the tailors.
Well, have it.
You know, you have the photo, right?
Yeah, it's in here.
Please. Yes, look at him. So chic. And this photo, I think, was taken at 50s ago, I guess. It's 50s. And this is so beautiful. Why not to learn about it? Um, when when we bring the Rosana Paulino or Aline Mota or Dalton Paula or Heitor dos Prazeres or Maria Auxiliadora, and the arts were so beautiful too. We look in these arts and these paintings and learn about candomblé and garments of these religions. We learn about the process of slavery that was so hard to us, and how can you seeing a new perspective? How can we construct another memories? You know, because Rosana Paulino and Aline Mota, um, they are sewers. Sewers, it's correct to sing. Who sewing?
Oh, they're sewers.
Sewers. Heitor dos Prazeres was a tailor, was you know,
Hmm.
a stylist too. This is so amazing. This is so rich. Why not to study fashion about this perspective?
Well,
So
I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think
thank
your
you.
English is beautiful. Like I understand it, so
Oh,
it's
thank you
great.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for jumping on with me and having this conversation.
Yes,
And
I will
actually, I'm
like.
mhm.
Go ahead.
Oh, actually, I'm going to see you later on because I'm taking your class.
Yes, this is a very chic student. This is our last class today.
I know. I'm really sad. I wish I could continue taking classes with you. I've,
Yes, me
I've learned so
too.
much. I've learned so much from you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jonathan. You are amazing friend. So a lovely person too.
Oh.
And yeah, you are. And this is very special because what I'm saying is for me, and I believe that for all the Afro Brazilians, that we have searching for our roots and searching to reconnect with Africa and our black skin. We have this conversation too because I want to talk about this. Beyonce is amazing, but wow. So for us as a diaspora, it's very important to do these connections, and establish these connections with Afro Americans from the USA or Latin America. It's so huge. It's so much to learn, and I am in this movement. And find you and find your project and found your magazine and all you're doing for to the fashion studies. It's amazing. So I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I've really been enriched by our friendship, and I just think these like I call them trans diasporic. These trans
Yes.
diasporic conversations are really important because there's a lot that we can learn from each other. I've learned so much from you. Oh my gosh! So
Thank you.
thank you for being a light. Thank you for being an educator. Thank you for being a presence. I love your articles in El Brazil. So you're amazing.
Ooh. Yeah, and next will be a surprise, right?
Oh yes, there's something in the
Yes.
pipeline. Yes, where we're gonna be with our mouse.
Yes. So it's a secret. So, Jonathan, thank you so much. And I have to say, before that we end this call, I love your background.
Oh yes.
It's golden. I love sparkling. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you later.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Hello.
Hi, Jonathan. How are
How are you?
you? Sorry
Good. How
about
are
the
you?
technical difficulties from
Oh.
before. Like I said, I'm a complete novice idea. So, but I have this. Look, it's
Oh.
wonderful. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Nice.
It arrived today. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that later.
Nice. Have at it. Thank you so much for contributing a beautiful piece.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me to collaborate on it. It was a real joy. And, I love to do anything that I can to share our Queen's story and, yeah, to get it out there as widely as possible.
So I would love to talk more about your piece in the
Yeah,
magazine, because your work is actually on, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but the first queen of Haiti,
Marie-Louise.
Marie Louise. Thank you. So can you talk a little bit more about about just about your research in
Sure.
general, but
Yeah.
then you found Marie Louise's will,
Yeah.
which is an amazing document. It's also you've made it available online, so
Yeah.
anyone can access it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the will is available on the website as a transcription. You can download a copy of the facsimile from the UK National Archives. I mean, it's like a couple of pounds. It really didn't cost me much money to download it. But for copyright reasons relating to probates and things, I couldn't reproduce the facsimile. So but I could reproduce a transcription. So I spent a number of hours painstakingly going through this horrible notarial document. And I mean, like all wills that were written in the 19th century were written in this horrible notarial scrawl. And it's just, I mean, I've worked in archives, but I mean, I find it very difficult to decipher some people's handwriting, and it was no mean feat. That's for sure. So I had a couple of collaborators help me. Paul Clammer, who is a travel writer, he wrote the Brat Guide to Haiti. He's also a real Christophe aficionado, so he absolutely loves everything Christophe, and is writing a book on Christophe at the moment, and a scholar called Gregory Pierrot, who also works on the Kingdom of Haiti. So they both helped to transcribe that document, which is great because it means that it's now available and out there. And, you know, I love what you're doing with the Rendering the Revolution project, making everything bilingual. Eventually, I aspire for my site also to be bilingual. And I'm working with some collaborators who work across cultural heritage, and somebody who's taken a keen interest in the will, who's translated it into French. So hopefully we can incorporate that translation on the website as well. And I think that will be especially useful for people in Haiti who want to look at that document. I mean, there could well be relatives still alive. You know, there are people named in this document who had a connection to Marie-Louise, and you know, those kind of networks extend out really far, and you know, it's just like you don't know how deep these roots go, but it's really it would be exciting to find out, I think, and certainly, you know, genealogy in Haiti is very complex. And, you know, when it comes to stories of women, like you were saying earlier when you were talking about the Rendering Revolution project, you know, images of women, stories of women are so few and far between. And when we do see them, they're presented through this kind of, often through this white male colonialist lens, right? So, you know, the stories that reach us are so often mediated through text. And yeah, I like that that you made the kind of linguistic link between text and textile, because, you know, I've always seen textiles as a kind of really important textual source. They are transcripts, and they tell us things that textual sources don't tell us, and especially, you know, that they kind of harbour the testimonies of women that have so often been lost in the archives. So I was really excited last year when I discovered that Mupana, which is the Musée du Panthéon National Haïtien, which is based in Port-au-Prince, had commissioned the restoration of a dress which had belonged to a lady in waiting in the court of Christophe, who was in fact the goddaughter of Marie-Louise Christophe, and her name was Eleanor de La Roche-Agnières, and her surname was Cherousy, which is like an anagram of Richeux, which was her father's name. Her father was white, and she was born in 1803. And at the time, colonial laws meant that he couldn't. But he did apparently leave a notarized document acknowledging her as his child. And he died, I think, in the early period of independence. But she left behind this gorgeous dress, which is now which belonged to her family, which the family gave over to Mupana. And earlier in the year, when traveling was still a feasible reality, I was able to go to Paris, and I met with the conservator there. She actually has an Instagram presence. Her name is Ségolène Bonnet. I don't know her handle, unfortunately, but she does some absolutely gorgeous work with fashion and textile restoration. And she gave me some really unique insights into the dress and its history. And you know what's fascinating when you get down into the kind of fabric of this stuff, you learn that there are so many mythologies woven around these subjects. And so, you know, when this dress was kind of first exhibited, it was described as a court dress, as an object which had been produced during the Kingdom of Haiti. But the conservator, having studied the dress and restored it, told me that, well, it's highly unlikely that actually it would have been worn during the period of the Kingdom of Haiti, because the waistline is quite low. So you know, during the kingdom, which was 1811 to 1820, the style would have been more of like the empire line style, so a higher waistline, and the belt is lower than that. So you know, that's really fascinating. But you know, we know that this woman owned this dress. We know that she was a part of the court, and she was a part of court life. And if anything, I think that that's more interesting, because it tells us that she had a kind of afterlife that went beyond the kingdom, like Marie Louise. So like Marie Louise had this really really interesting afterlife, which I'm like trying to reassemble parts of. So too did these other women. And you know, these are kind of transcripts of their endurance, I guess. So yeah, I realise I've deviated a little bit from the article.
Oh no.
But I guess I was just at the starting point on my research when I wrote that article, and was thinking about fashions in the Kingdom of Haiti and Marie Louise, and it's evolved so much since then.
But also one thing, you know, being a historian, I was really taken by the process of transcription. People, you know, don't realize how hard paleography is.
Yeah.
I've spent literally like days, weeks of my life poring over crumbling sheets of paper in the tropical heat of Brazil. Like it's a lot of work. So thank you for like transcribing that, Will, because you know, even if you know, you're knowledgeable of the language, like 19th century Nortorial French is very different than modern
Oh, massively.
21st century. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I would spend, in my case it's Portuguese, but I would just look, like sometimes things are abbreviated, like there's different words for things that don't exist anymore. There's units of measure that aren't really used anymore. It's really, really tricky. So thank you for doing that work of transcribing the will and making it available to the public.
Well, I mean, I have a lot more documents that I'm sitting on that I still need to transcribe, actually. And I think that I mean, there are some people that have done that work of transcription already. So because, you know, there are many great scholars who have been working on studies relating to the Haitian Revolution for literally decades. You know, people have uncovered some of this stuff before. So there's a whole kind of compiled edition of letters relating to Henri Christophe and Thomas Clarkson, the British abolitionist. And this was compiled in around the 1950s, I think, by Earl Leslie Griggs. But sometimes it's really important to go back to those original documents, because you realize that sometimes those people who are transcribing things get it wrong, right? And this is a case in point. So as a result of going back to the archives, of finding her will, and also kind of finding a number of other different pieces in the archives, I was able to conclusively pinpoint one of her London addresses. And the building is actually still standing.
Wow.
Remarkably, it's the address at the time was 30 Weymouth Street, and that now resides at 49 Weymouth Street. So, you know, anyone who's in the Marylebone area in London can go and check it out. It's still there, the house that Marie Louise, first Queen of Haiti, lived in.
Wow.
Which like is amazing. That whole area was bombed in the Blitz, and this house is surviving, which is great. But in the transcribed copy of this letter that Marie Louise sent, one of very few letters that she sent that's been recovered, it has her living in Weymouth, Dorset. And when I went back to it, I said, I was thinking, you know, this doesn't seem right. I've not found any accounts of her that say that she ever lived in Dorset. And I don't know why she would. That's quite far away from everything and everyone that she would have known here. So in her will, it said that she was a resident of Weymouth Street, Portland Place, which was in Marylebone. And I thought to myself, I wonder if that is Weymouth Street. And yeah, and I checked it over in the original document in the British Library, and it was in fact Weymouth Street. And I went through the rates books of the time and found the exact address. So that was really cool.
So is it a private residence now?
It's a private residence, and I think it's it's a Georgian townhouse, so there are probably a few flats in there. I think that I checked it out on Zoopla a little while ago, and one of the apartments inside that building was being let out, and for quite a considerable monthly fee. So it was fashionable lodgings back then. It's still very, very fashionable and highly sought after lodgings now.
You wrote a beautiful article. Thank you so much for, you know, contributing to the Fashion Itself magazine, but also thank you for being part of Rendering Revolution. Like, we're honored to have you part of the team. Your expertise has been, you know, much appreciated. So I'm gonna let you go, but thank you so much for taking time and jumping on this IG Live. And
thank you for having me, Jonathan, and I'm really grateful to be a part of this project. This is gorgeous. Everyone go buy it. It's lovely. And look, I'm spotting my pin here as well for you, true ambassador. I'll let you say your final words to people, but thanks for having me.
Oh no, thank you so much. Like, your article is amazing, and I enjoyed the conversation. And so thank you for sharing your insights with everyone.
Me too. Great.
Okay,
bye.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for tuning in to the virtual launch party. As you can see, the decoration behind me is falling off the wall. So I'm going to take that as a sign that I should be wrapping up. But I really enjoyed working on this magazine. Like I said, it really is a creative outlet for me. And I'm really thankful for all the contributors to the magazine. You know, everyone wrote really beautiful articles and pieces, and it was just a pleasure to read everyone's work. So thank you so much for anyone who bought a magazine, anyone who contributed to the magazine, anyone who's watching right now. I'm just really thankful for everyone. So.